Welcome to the Pivot Point Podcast. This season, I'm focused on inclusive leadership and how to lead like an ally. In this episode, I will share some ideas and insights from my new research from my new book, Lead Like an Ally, and leave you with some actionable tips to think about and discuss with your organization. I share this information because inclusive leadership is a journey. It requires bravery and courage, and you do not have to do it alone. At Pivot Point, I believe we are stronger together. We are one. So let's dig into this week's topic. We're marching towards the finish line in season 4. Sneak peek, The Wizard of Oz revealing kind of that behind the curtain moment of all the content that we've got fully built for Lead Like an Ally inclusive leadership program. It's all virtual, no more than an hour a month of effort, but it's way more intense than this. You're just getting the sneak peek. So come on, go ahead and join that 30-day preview. Get that information at nextpivotpoint.com or even more directly, leadlikeanally.com. Today's subject is race. So we mentioned in the unconscious bias module, episode 8, that race is one of the categories of bias, right? One of the many. I'm just going to distill the top 3 that most organizations have on their priority list because guess what? Race, gender, not always, and sexual orientations, especially not always, is visible. We love things that are visible and that we can see. There's so much diversity, though, that we know is invisible. We've talked about our diversity stories, right? So as we head towards the home stretch, I really want to encourage you and challenge you today. As someone that is a white woman living in the Midwest of the United States, it's pretty conservative. I see race and race differences every single day. And it's something that it makes me feel deeply uncomfortable. It's something that I shared with you before. I have some racial bias that I need to work on. I need to be aware of. I'm really not going to be able to change that bias because I grew up in a white suburb where I was around people that looked like me a lot. Now, conversely, just because your skin's a certain color doesn't mean that you have inherited a set of privileges. Chances are you have. But there's always exceptions to that based on your experiences. I know several people in the community that are white that have grown up in predominantly people of color neighborhoods, whether it's Black, Hispanic, whatever that was. I have a completely different perspective on race. So we are a product of our experiences. And I just want to put it out there that being a white person talking about races is deeply uncomfortable, but it's something I'm really flexing my muscle on. I'm reading up on, I'm listening about. There's so many excellent resources out there, from the book White Fragility, highly recommend it, to the podcast Seeing White. Super helpful to understand the history that we are not taught about race, especially in the United States. So without further ado, let's reveal some tools. How do we get better at the race component of equality as an ally, as an inclusive leader? It is important that first and foremost, you own your role in the system. There is a system. It is fully supported, fully vetted, still alive and well today in a post-slavery, post-Jim Crow law, post-civil rights world where I think we're told like, oh, that's all taken care of. No. The history of slavery, in fact, is 400 plus years now deep. If you think about the Civil War and the abolishment of slavery, that was only in the 1860s. Fast forward to 1964 with the Civil Rights Act. That was only 50 years ago, people. Change has not happened that swiftly, and nor should we be naive enough to believe in 50 plus years that we're going to wipe the slate clean. There are very few people of color leading organizations. There are very few women of color leading organizations. There are very few people of different ethnicities leading organizations here, especially in the United States. So own your role in the system. Please do not say things like, oh, that's been taken care of. Oh, civil rights happened a long time ago. We're good. That's the complacent white person thing to say. And so I invite you, as somebody that used to kind of think the same way, like, why are we still talking about this? It's over. There are ramifications and systems that support keeping certain people down and certain people up. And the more you're familiar with that, the more you own your role, then I have some privilege as a result of my skin color, or maybe I don't as a result of my skin color. We're certainly not going to play the blame game. This is about how we help each other in the first step. And all of this is awareness. So own your role. Accept that there is a system, that things are not equal, that there are still so many red line districts drawn invisibly in communities to keep certain communities white and certain communities people of color. And just know that we all are playing a role in this. And we're not consciously doing it, but we're subconsciously living in a system that might behoove us or might not behoove us. So that's learning one. Get in depth with history, especially African American history, Hispanic history. It is so interesting to think about how we've approached the subject of slavery and immigration in our country. And so get familiar, read what's not in your history book. Step 2, address not seeing color. We all see color. Anyone that tells me I don't see color, you're lying. Unless you're colorblind, which I find, even if you're colorblind, you can see shades, right, of difference. We are wired to see difference. It is a primal habit to size somebody up, largely based on how they look, and decide if we can trust them, if they belong in our tribe. That means you do see skin color being black, brown, olive, whatever it is, you see it. So stop saying that. And if someone else says it, say, actually, you do. I'll challenge you on that one. After a speaking event a few months ago, I had a woman say that to me. I don't see color. I understand what you're saying, but I really don't see it. Like, yes, you do, is what I said. We all do, in fact. This does not mean you're a racist. This does not mean you're an ist of any kind. It just means you do see it. And if you keep telling yourself you don't see it, you're never going to be able to step into this journey. So you do see it. Again, just like with bias, doesn't mean you behave in a way that offends somebody of color. Doesn't mean you behave in a way that's exclusionary towards people of color, but you do see it. You do see differences. Step 3 on race, focus on cultural diversity. This is a term that surfaced early on in my research. I was doing focus groups with different ethnically diverse groups. That's what we were calling it as white people. That's what we deemed was the appropriate term. What I learned in those focus groups is that saying ethnicity or saying, fragmenting people of color into the African American, the Latino, the various Asian American communities. I mean, you could really bifurcate this whole thing out into 10 different categories. It's separating us. We are stronger together. And if we were to use an inclusive term, I was educated by these kind people of color in an organization that cultural diversity is a more inclusive term. It is less about what's different about me. It's more about what could we have in common from a cultural perspective? What are my differences in my culture, and how could I educate you on that? So things like religion, food, holidays. I love organizations that openly talk about those experiences from a cultural perspective. It's way more inclusive than just putting the ethnicity piece on it or just putting the color piece on it. So cultural diversity, love that term. 4. On race, use the term people of color. So I've given you a lot in your diversity dictionary so far. Diversity dictionary terms, I'm going to warn you, they're changing all the time. This work we cannot possibly keep up with. For now, the term that is most inclusive that I have been told by my allies in the racial space is people of color. Now, does that mean you cannot say she is a Black woman? She is an African American woman? What I've been told by my allies is that's a very personal thing. Some people do not like the other term. Ask them. It is totally fair to ask somebody what they prefer. But if you're not sure about somebody's cultural background, if you're not sure about their skin color, I often use the term people of color to be inclusive. Now, other side of this, as a white person, I don't have to tell people I'm white. That is a privilege I have. White is default. I'm not saying that's fair. I'm not saying that's right. It should be different. So I've actually started saying I am a white woman in conversations about this. It's fairly obvious, but it goes without saying, I get that I don't know the experiences of what it's like to be of a different ethnicity, a different culture, a different race, a different skin color. I couldn't possibly understand, and I'm never going to pretend. However, I rely on my allies to educate me every day. And that's what we need to do as inclusive leaders. Always be willing to learn. Always be willing to meet our allies where they're at. I hope you enjoyed this topic. I am getting fired up. Please do listen to all 4 seasons of all of our episodes, from candid conversations to hot topics to expert interviews. It's all there, nextpivotpoint.com. There, you can also sign up for the complimentary 30-day preview of our new program, Lead Like an Ally. You can also order your book, our new book, Lead Like an Ally. I appreciate you listening to this episode. Who do you know that needs to hear this message? Hit the share button. Hit it right now. Share it with somebody you care about. They will become better. They will learn. You will give them tools. You can have a great conversation, I promise, because this one in particular really warrants a robust conversation. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Simply search Julie Kratz, Kratz. I post every single day about topics like this. I host this podcast because I believe we are stronger together. We're one.